welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. So thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Hey, everybody. Here we are. And man, just another episode here on Real Estate Mogul MD. And I just wanted to give everybody a challenge before we get started. Oftentimes we'll ask each other, how are you doing? And I challenge everybody listening to this, say 7 days. For the next 7 days, I want you to say and feel this: I've never been better, right? Best day of my life. Say and feel that, and you'll brighten up your day, and it'll brighten up the person's day on the other side of the conversation as well, too. So go ahead, Real Estate Mogul, 7-day challenge. How are you doing? Never been better. Just try it. Try it. I've never been better. Today, we're speaking with a urologist from Green Bay, Wisconsin, who's using commercial real estate to become work optional. I love this word, work optional, and help other surgeons do the same. Mr. Mike McManus, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Never been better.
Never been better. There we go. How's it feel? How's it feel?
It feels good.
Man,
it's a good way to start.
Sometimes you just gotta, you have to work your way into believing it, right?
Yeah.
And similar like the show world, and I'm sure physicians, every time you step into an exam room or into a procedure, sometimes you don't want to be there, right? And you have to believe it. You have to will yourself through it the same way. If you start your day that way, what better way to do it?
That's a great attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. It's similar to performing. So as the listeners, some of you may have heard of it, this thing hanging behind me in my studio here is my guitar. And sometimes, before you got up on stage, you had to turn a switch and turn that corner and be like, now you're an entertainer. Now you're an entertainer, right?
Yeah. That's
you have to believe it.
Yeah, the moment before you step on, you can have a bad day, but once you step on, the bad days are over.
Yeah, has to be. Similar to medicine, I'm sure. And while we're here, Mike, you are in Green Bay, right? And you've got a picture of Vancouver behind you. So tell us a little bit of story. You're in Green Bay, but you got a picture of Vancouver. Do you travel there?
Yeah, a few years ago, we had a family vacation to Whistler. I grew up in Colorado, and I was actually looking for something that was a better Zoom background. And we were talking about commercial real estate, and so I was just flipping through photos, and this is from the pier in Vancouver, looking back downtown.
Very nice, very nice. You grew up in Colorado. Tell us a little bit of just a background on your medical journey. Like what interests you in becoming a physician, and then kind of just a summary of where you started and where you're at now.
Yeah, it was something I thought about when I was younger, but it was definitely not a straight path. I started in engineering school and dropped out and went back to school several times. I was actually a ski instructor for a while, and then decided that it was time to go to medical school. Went to medical school at the University of Colorado. I don't know, I think I just hit it off with the urologists there, and those seemed like my people. And that's kind of how I ended up in urology.
Mm-hmm. And through med school residency and now your permanent location in Green Bay, tell us a little bit about daily life as a urologist in Green Bay.
Green Bay is a good town. It's big enough to have most everything you need in life without some of the chaos. People laugh in Green Bay that if your commute across town takes more than 2 minutes more than you thought it would, you're wondering what's up with the traffic. So part of that, it's a town of a metro area that's maybe 300,000 if you draw a big enough circle, that's got highway infrastructure built for 13 Sundays a year. Mm-hmm. Move a lot of people in and out for Packers games. And, so it's really easy to get around. So it's a good place. It's been a good place to raise kids. Good schools, and it's definitely been a good place to practice urology. It's busy. Um, and we moved here because one of my mentors was here and looking for a partner. And I thought I was coming to get to go and to work with him, but found out after I'd been here for a couple of years, I was actually here to replace him, and he retired.
Oh, interesting.
So, but it's been a good run.
Yeah. I actually went to my first year out of high school into college. I went to Milwaukee School of Engineering. So right downtown there, the old MSOE, trimesters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, are you W-2 now, or you said you replaced your mentor basically? Is that private practice, or is that W-2? Tell us a little bit about that.
So we are a private group, one of few still left out there. Mm-hmm. We have a very close partnership with a healthcare system, but being a private group gives a lot more freedom to change things, to make decisions and do things like that. So,
and your journey too, Mike, tell us a little bit about, because something I hear a lot and we talk about a lot is this touch or tendency towards burnout in this direction. Have you had any experience in that?
I have. I think it was multifactorial. I kind of all at the same time hit a point where I'd kind of accomplished everything that I really wanted to do professionally. I was, doing all the big surgeries that I thought were cool and felt like I was doing it well. And then kind of reached a point where there wasn't the same drive. And it was interesting, right about the same time that my two daughters hit puberty and decided they didn't need dad like they used to.
Oh man.
And so it was a little bit of a tough time where wasn't really sure what I was doing in that time.
And then the commercial real estate part, where did that come in relative to that time period?
It came out of that. I think it had always been something that was interesting. I mean, my first house, I kind of did a house hack during medical school and bought a 2-bedroom condo and finished another bedroom in the basement and had 2 roommates. So it didn't cost me anything to live there. And then our first house during residency was a 100-year-old duplex that was falling down, and we completely remodeled, and then sold it a year later for like a 50% profit. And then things got busy and we didn't do real estate for a while. A while later, we bought a new house like in the summer of 2009 at the absolute peak in the market. Mm-hmm. And then when we couldn't sell it a few years later because we were moving, we rented it out. And that was the first time we'd rented to people who weren't roommates. And it was a total disaster. Kind of came out of that, I think, and this is something we'll never do again.
Yeah.
But it was still something that was interesting. And I think through the burnout process, I was looking for something else because I didn't know how much longer I could practice. There, you see the storm clouds and you kind of start wondering, like, I'm fighting through this. I'm doing okay, but I don't see work until I'm 70 now. I don't, there's going to be an end point here. And I didn't, on the other side of that, I didn't go to medical school until I was 28. Spent a few years working in rural practices that didn't really thrive. And so there wasn't a big fallback retirement savings at that point. And it was like, I need to have a plan. And I worked with a coach and I talked to lots of different people and went through several different scenarios. And none of them really stuck until I got to commercial real estate. Initially entered that in the idea of doing multifamily. We bought a 4-plex, and then saved one of the units. It's about 3 hours north of here up on Lake Superior. And we saved a unit that we use and let friends use. And instead of buying a vacation home, we decided to buy a 4-plex. And that actually went well. But as I dug into it, I was like, this small multifamily thing is going to take a while to scale to what I want to do. Kind of transition from that into being a limited partner, a passive investor in syndications. Got involved in quite a few of those. and then eventually started, deciding or the burnout thing's tough. It kind of goes in waves. Was really close to quitting for a while, kind of figured it out, came back, was doing better, and going back and forth, but until realizing there were only a few years left. And so the idea of multifamily was difficult to scale. And there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people doing it. And so from there started looking and moving into the non-multifamily commercial.
Non-multifamily meaning like
retail, warehouse. Yeah. Where you're renting to business owners instead of
tenants,
families.
Residential tenants. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So non-res, very interesting, non-res commercial. So just touching back on that, before I went back through this journey here, I just want to sit on burnout just for a second. I don't know. Sure. I'm not a physician. I don't know that. I am a go-getter myself, and I don't know any other path forward than success. I don't know what it's like to not work hard, to not give everything that I absolutely can. So in that way, I share. But I'm saying that because I've not been in your position to have that burnout. But I do know it's not like a flag that comes up or a light that comes on or some you see this writing in front of you. Like these are stacked up emotions that you don't know are happening. And then this moment of self-realization happens typically when you look back over a certain period of time, right?
Yeah, well, mine wasn't even a self-realization. we were trying to grow the business, and we were looking at some new locations and doing a bunch of different things. And I actually hired a high performance coach. Mm-hmm. And it was more looking at how can I be more productive? How can I, how am I interacting with my partners and all these things, like really trying to push this thing forward. And through that process, we were digging into a bunch of stuff. And one day my coach, she goes, there's something I have to tell you, and this might be hard to hear. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, I think you're burnt out and I'm really worried about you.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, well, I know I got some rough days, but it was, and then you kind of had to stop. And, she's like, well, she was like, do you know what that means? And I'm like, oh, I think, but so we dug into it for a while and realized that a lot of, that you go and you have a bad day and you want to say, oh, I had a bad day because there was this one thing that happened, but those one things happen all the time, and then exactly. And that on a regular basis, though, that thing is tripping you up instead of just being, oh, that was a tough interaction and on you go. And I think that was kind of the realization that there was all this frustration, and it was showing in my relationship with my kids. I was frustrated with them. My marriage was tough, was fighting with my wife, was going to work and having a hard time being on the same page with my partners, wasn't feeling the reward that I had out of my job, but had never really considered that I was burnt out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For somebody else to see that, I think there's something called the Jahara's window, and a piece of that section is where other people see what we can't see. And in that scenario, and that you were just illustrating there is interesting, because as an entrepreneur, as a high performance person in general, our families take the brunt of it. And I've seen this through generations. This happen. It reminded me of a story, Mike, of this ability. Like if life was simple, if you could just go to work, clock in, clock out, 9 to 5, right? It would be easier for us to use this thought or this system here. There's something, you hang a little tree at the front of your house or something, and you call it the beep tree, tree. And when you get home with that day, if you could just stop at that tree for just 1 second and hang on that tree, And then you could go in and be that father, be that husband. But when high performance scenarios, entrepreneur, multiple businesses, this kind of stuff, you need multiple trees in multiple spots throughout your life because things just bleed together, right?
Yeah. And that was the crazy thing, with my kids, because when they were little, you come through the door and it's dad, and
so happy.
They're like
on their face.
Yeah, they're like, read me a book, let's go swing.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world just goes away. They were the tree. Like they just, like if there was anything bad in my head, it just evaporated. Like it was just completely vaporized by their smiles.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And, but then all of a sudden, they're going through puberty and they're middle school girls, and they got more drama than I do.
Yeah.
And so to come home, and instead of this wonderful, happy place, was this totally chaotic, crazy place. And, and that, and I, if everything had been perfect everywhere else, maybe that would have been different. So I think some storm clouds kind of came through together, and we were working, 60-hour weeks. We had a busy practice. We were thriving. I mean, we were killing it financially, but then it starts to stack up when you're missing things, and you're like, I'm getting tired of my job always trumping everything. Yeah. It's a job. And then once I had that thought the first time, then it just keeps digging in, like, oh, you missed this thing of your daughter's again. You had to leave the concert because your pager went off. You couldn't go to this out of town event, or recital. And, it started becoming a bigger deal. And I guess the advantage early on, when I had my own practice and it was in a rural area, and though it was not doing well financially and not very busy, I had plenty of time to be at everything.
Yeah.
But then, with the success of being in Green Bay, but it really started to be where the practice owned me rather than me owning the practice.
Yeah. And it's, again, this hyper focused, high performance person, you really have the ability to say no. And it's a crucial skill. And the ability to say no, I think so many times our families take the brunt of that, because they're the easiest to say no to sometimes, when you're prioritizing life. And it shouldn't be like that, right?
It shouldn't be. And I think this is the hardest thing for doctors, though, because when you tell your kid that your wife, you're going to miss date night, or your kid, you're going to miss a school program, because you're at work, because somebody's writhing in pain with a kidney stone, or somebody came in with, a bad cancer, and we're going to squeeze them on the schedule, and I'm going to be in the OR till 9:00. It's a tough thing, because you're like, well, I'm helping people, and people need things. But they do take the brunt of it, and it builds up. And I think there's a point now where you can never work through that cycle. There's always somebody who needs something. And I had that realization one day, like, if I make somebody wait, they have a really bad week, maybe a bad couple weeks. But if I never make anybody wait, I have a bad life. Yeah. And, and to make that turn in thought was huge.
In this exchange, somebody's going to wait. Somebody is going to wait. So either you're making your patients wait or your family wait. And the thing about the patients is patients will always be there. In general, patients will always be there. There will be different patients. There's different life sets, different life frame, but your family cannot wait, right? Because you have one family, one lifetime with them.
Yeah. And but it even was deeper than that. Cause then I said, okay, I'm going to cut my schedule back. I'm not going to stay late. I'm not going to do this. And so then our staff, who was used to, part of what they liked about their job is they never had to tell patients no, because we just got everybody on. And so now all of a sudden they had to say, okay, your surgery schedule, or your surgery is going to be 2 months from now. And so they get that negative from the patient who's like, oh, or, we can't, there's a wait for this. There's a wait for that. So now they're not happy and they're looking at you like, what are you doing? It's never been like this. Why does it have to be like this? And I have two of the hardest working partners around, and they, go back and forth, sometimes they're like, well, you're not pulling your weight. And one of them, though, is the hardest working person in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And at the same time is the most concerned about everybody else too. Oh no, you don't need to, I got this. Yeah. And I think, to be around somebody like that, who also, I think he likes practicing urology, like, it's whatever your favorite thing is, to go play your guitar. For somebody else, like, yeah, I'm going to go to a concert. I'm going to go out to dinner. I'm going to go to a movie. I'm going to go skiing.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to the OR.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if he'd rather do anything else. It's like, he's a hardworking guy who loves what he's doing, and he's super productive. And you feel this pull like, well, God, I don't want to be the lazy guy. I'm not a lazy guy. I'm a high performer.
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
And so that was a tough part for a while too, was kind of getting through this. Like, okay, I'm not him. He's not me.
Totally different lives. Yeah.
I have to look at what's my best life, and maybe it's different than what's going on here.
Yeah. I heard, I listen to Alex Hormozy often, and he talks about Warren Buffett a lot. And a quote from Warren Buffett was to take your top 50 things that you value most, the top 50 goals, write them all out, 1 to 50 in order of importance, right? Write them all out. And then, Mike, take a pen, and at number 3, write a line across there, rip the page off and throw everything else away. And those are the top 3 things in your life. And more than likely, it sounds like to me, like family is in there in those top 3, right, Mike?
Absolutely.
So being able to focus that on other, on the ability to say no. So you tie those 2 things together. What do you value most? Not only right this moment, but in 5 years and 10 years long term, right? What matters most long term? And then you tie that with the ability to say no. It changes your life.
It does. It does. And it's been a real continued thing. I mean, this is I cut my schedule back significantly I started last October doing it, but it really took till the first of the year to make it happen, because people just put stuff on, because that's what they'd always done. Yeah. And so, that we're having this conversation in the late afternoon because of this change in my schedule. And part of it that I was trying to do the real estate thing and move things along, and I wasn't making progress. I'm like, all right, I need time to do something every day. For a while, I was doing it in the early morning, but you can't call a broker at 4 a.m. But that causes this ripple effect, because our whole practice was built around all the docs working the same, all the docs working really hard. And the financial structure was built around that. And so it had what I thought was going to be a big impact on my life and a small impact financially, had a much bigger impact financially and a smaller impact on my life. Mm-hmm. And so it didn't really work. And so I'm
stepping away or giving yourself more to the group. It
didn't work because it really disrupted the finances, because it had a much bigger, I cut my work schedule back by 18%, but it affected,
Okay.
But it affected my production by 30%.
Yeah.
So then it kicked off all these things that we'd never fallen back on in the contracts on if somebody's not towing their weight.
Right.
And, some people weren't really happy with it. So kind of had to look at all that and say, how am I going to do it differently? And I'm still not spending that much, as much time as I wanted to with my family. We're not getting these things done. So I said, okay, this is going to have to be a bigger thing. And so we're working out right now, me just going full halftime.
Full halftime.
Full halftime.
I love that. Full halftime.
No,
yeah. I'm serious. I'm going halftime completely. Yes. I love the way that's put. And it's hard to do, right? It's hard to do.
It is. And because it affects so many different systems. And when there's only 3 docs, I mean, we've got like 7 mid-levels. We got another doc coming, and I thought, okay, I'll start this a month after he starts. So, but it still just changed what everybody was thinking. It was like this, just, So we're still trying to figure that out and see how that's going to work. And it might be it might end up me transitioning out of the practice, but it can be a tough thing, because if you're in a world that's built around it being your number one, I mean, they make movies about this, right? It's usually a law firm, I think, in the movies. And somebody says this isn't going to rule everything anymore, and it ends up being this huge life change.
Yep.
So
well, I guess the good thing is you don't have to get beat out like it's a gang or something, right? It may feel like it sometimes, Mike.
Yeah, it's the emotional beat out.
Yeah, and there's no how-to manual going through this, right? And then there's and tied into this too is like the agreements that you set forth, the relationships that you've set forth, and this path that you guys have journeyed together. And everything's different as we grow older, and our focus changes, our value, our focus on what we value most in life.
Yes. And I think, I mean, I guess I've always been somebody too, who, when there's this need to be great at or really good at whatever I'm doing, and that can consume me and keep me occupied and happy and making progress on that and rewarded to a point. And I had this realization looking back, pondering the days of your lives, that when I hit, 90, 95%, where you're like, you know what, I'm pretty good at what I do. And where that curve, you're like, I'm getting better, and it starts to flatten off. And you're like, now to get from here to that last 10%, to get from the 90th percentile to the 99th percentile, it's a slower path. And I don't find the same reward there. And for a while I felt bad about that, but I was talking to somebody recently who's in the process of starting their own company, and they said, no, I'm the same way. It was kind of this as a ski instructor, like it consumed me for years, until all of a sudden I'm like, like I'm this next step is harder, and it's not as much fun anymore. And that was kind of the go to medical school. And then that was years of that. And when I reached a point where there weren't these new hurdles to jump over that felt like success, I needed another challenge. And that realization about myself.
Yeah, this journey too. I love how we started all of this, and I'd asked the question on tiptoeing into the burnout piece, and then how related that this passive income investing is tied to that, whether it's a proactive scenario or a reactive scenario. Some cases, there's so much more in opportunity as you're building this path in medicine to where you start investing. And when you mentioned, Mike, the path that you laid out, a house hack, early on a house hack, monstrous, like so many people should be doing that.
Yeah, it's one I've already started poking my daughters. I'm like, listen, the older one's heading off to college, and I'm like, when next year, no, we can co-invest here. Like, don't just look to rent, look for something and find the right roommates, and for a little bit of work, you can live for free. Yep. And yeah, more people should. It's a great way to start.
So I say this often, like I walk around so hours of my life, it feels like hours of day of my life, biting my tongue, because I'll hear people talking, and I don't want to offer unsolicited advice, but this is one of those times, Mike. It's like I hear a young kid like at the gym or something, I'm looking to, and then I hear him talking with a mortgage broker, and like they're trying to fit him in a box, and I'm just thinking about biting my tongue so bad, because house hacking is a huge piece. So if there's anybody in residency right now, in med school, listen up. Right? House hacking is a way for you to have not only your rent paid for free, but you're building equity, you're building experience, right? And this at a time in your life, it's your time to learn, right? It's your time to learn.
Yeah, because I did the house hack during medical school.
Yep.
I mean, actually coming from being a ski instructor, which it may seem glamorous, but you don't make any money.
Right. Right.
I had more cash flow with med school loans than I had as a ski instructor.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, they give me enough money here that I can afford rent around the medical center.
Yeah.
If I move another 2 miles out, I can buy something for that price.
Absolutely.
And so that was, it was the same thing as a resident. We bought a place that was unsellable.
How did you finance it?
Well, we got a loan. That was in 2003. We bought that house. This was in Danville, Pennsylvania, middle of Pennsylvania. Geisinger Medical Center is this giant hospital in this little town that supports these cities all around it. And we financed it. We bought this duplex for $44,000.
Okay.
That's easy to get a loan on.
Right. So were you showing income though?
When we bought it, no, but we just bought as our residence.
Mm-hmm.
Because when even though as a resident, I think at Geisinger, we got paid really well as an intern, and I was making $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
But when you're buying a home for, like 110% of your annual income, banks are pretty happy about that. Most people don't do that.
Right. Right.
So that's how so it wasn't really hard to finance. I think our monthly mortgage payment on that place was like $213 a month.
Yeah. That puts a smile on my face, just that right there. So and then just for everybody out there too, some people may have experience in the house hacking, but the idea is if we're finding this place to live, instead of paying rent, we're actually paying a mortgage, and we have other people coming in, roommates most of the time, who are then paying the rent, who is paying the mortgage, which leaves us sometimes cash flow and building equity. Come on.
Love it. That's best day ever.
Yeah, it's awesome. So that house hack is a huge piece, and that's kind of like what started off your career, right? And how do you think that came? Was that something you crossed by yourself, or did you had you read of it, somebody else doing it, or did somebody around you do it, or just kind of like stumbled on it?
I don't know if there were books about. I hadn't heard the term. I heard the term house hack in the last few years.
Right.
I think I had known people while I was working in the ski industry who actually owned their place and had roommates paying them rent. And so I'm pretty sure that's where I came across the whole idea.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And now the speed, it may be our downfall, but the speed of information now at this point is makes it a little easier if you're looking to learn how to do stuff, right? Bigger Pockets, YouTube, all of this stuff. And then to lease or rent spaces out, Airbnb, VRBO, furnished finders. Like there's so many platforms that you can use to make this a reality for yourself.
Yeah. We still have our fourplex and we advertise it on Facebook.
Yep.
That's where we get the most, it goes out on some of the other rental. Is
that long-term? Yeah. That's a long-term rental.
Yeah. It's a long-term.
So you're managing it yourself too?
My wife's managing it now.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be a whole nother hour conversation in itself, huh?
That's it's not enough work, and she's not interested in being enough work for her to be a real estate professional. But that's a whole nother discussion that I wish I learned about the whole real estate professional status in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wait, what? It should be like in the graduating from residency manual that every doctor gets, like, you will be a high W-2 earner.
Real estate professional. Yeah.
And if your spouse isn't also a doctor, and they're planning on staying home, you need to know about this real estate professional status.
And I love that direction, Mike. And a lot of times, we'll find that doctors are married to doctors. You associate with other doctors. This is the way life goes. But when somebody is available, and we're talking about this real estate professional, first of all, full disclosure, I'm not a certified public accountant. I'm not a tax attorney or anything like that. I believe it's 750 hours or more than 50% of the work that you put in, right? There's some levels,
criteria.
Yeah, that we would have to hit. And the big swing of this for everybody out there is for the the passive losses to offset your active income. And when you said that this should be like, you should be ringing this from the hills when you're graduating, right? Because you're going to be a high earner.
Yeah. And
right?
You're going to be at the high tax bracket. You're going to pay a lot of taxes.
And to offset that active income with passive losses, I'm talking about depreciation. And it's not even like a straight line depreciation on residential. So we take 27 and a half years of the property value minus the actual land value. And then you can multiply it by your tax bracket and figure out what actual tax money that you're keeping. But there's something called cost segregation where we can accelerate depreciation.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
I mean, it can turn into like cutting your taxes in half.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. And the tough part is there were times I had two separate accountants and I had some stuff in real estate and I asked them, well, what more can we do? There's nothing. We're doing everything. They didn't even know about it.
Yes.
And that was, so if you're getting into real estate, you have to find an accountant who
the first question
is a real estate investor.
Yeah. The first question you ask them, how many rentals do you have? That's a great question to ask them. And don't be afraid to go outside of when I say this a lot, expanding your association. Don't be afraid to go outside of your area, right? Of medicine, right? Finding somebody somebody does your books for medicine. They should do books for medicine, right? But when you step outside that and you start investing in real estate, you need to build a power team that does the same thing.
Yeah. And I think, doctors are so, I don't know if pessimistic, untrusting. Because I think I got the first call.
Risk averse, I think, is a great, yes. It comes down to trusting too. Yep.
And you feel like somebody's trying to get a hold of your money from the start. I got a first like random cold call from a stockbroker like the day after I finished medical school.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, dude, you don't understand. I've got a pile of debt and I got a new job as an intern making $30,000 a year. I'm not a rich person.
Yep.
You don't understand where we're at here. But you always feel like and so you feel like everything's probably a scam or a ripoff. And I didn't go to a real estate conference until it was actually this spring when I was well into it. But the thing I found there is you find these real estate accountants who specialize in this. Yeah. And they're really good at it. And at least talking to those people and knowing they're out there and meeting multiple ones. And then if you look them up on Google or watch their YouTube stuff, you see other ones who do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you said it opens up this whole world that before, when I was calling local accountants, nobody knew anything about this stuff.
Yep. Yeah. And nobody's going to care more about your money than you do. So in this journey, when you're reaching out and building your power team, yes, expanding your associations, going to places that these people like to speak, but also understanding too, Mike, and I know that there's reason for you to harbor, to hold things close to you, because everybody's not good. Could you imagine if the world was like that, where everybody was good and everybody was trustworthy? No, everybody wants to spend your money, and it's just the way that it goes. But you build those relationships and you go to these types of events, Mike, and you can start talking, having conversations. You pick up little pieces, the lingo, and then I can have an educated conversation with the next guy and the next guy. And then what are the comparisons or the similarities, right? And then can I have a reference? Who do you work with? Can I talk with them?
Yeah, that yes. Yeah. It's so much that, you go to a couple of these conferences and you just start talking to people, and you learn a little bit, even if you went there and you didn't buy anything or partner with anybody or do any of that, you just walked around and talked to people. You're going to pick up so much. You could walk in day one knowing nothing, and 3 days later, you'll be on the way to having to understanding what you're doing. Yep.
I love it. And I said the speed of information could eventually be our downfall, but at the same time, right now it creates opportunities for us. There's so many different places where you want to learn. And from you to go from house hack to fourplex to LPs, limited partners, and then now general partner and probably a sponsor, GP and sponsorship in these non-residential units. You've talked to a few people along the way.
I have, and it's amazing where you pick up. And I've had conversations with people you learn things you didn't intend to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I had actually some of the best advice I got on podcasting was from a guy who's an investor relations for a big multifamily sponsor. And he'd moved into that position because of some events during COVID where his engineering job went away, and then ended up having a podcast and then getting this job, and I was talking to him about, fundraising stuff. And next thing you know, we're talking about podcast. And so it was, I think I went to a talk on hotels and ended up learning a bunch about land entitlement, and I didn't even I'm like, there's nothing else going on right now during the meeting. I'll listen to this thing on hotels. Maybe I want to do hotels. And I really had no interest in hotels. I never even thought about land entitlement. By the time I left, I'm like, I got to learn more about land entitlement. This is amazing.
And generally speaking, what is land entitlement?
So land entitlement. So if a piece of land is just sitting there and it's usually got some zoning of some sort on it, but it may often be residential or farmland. So the land entitlement process is basically changing the zoning. So getting it zoned mixed use or getting it zoned commercial or warehouse. Typically to do that, you need some sort of plans, civil engineer, an architect. So you got to put some money into it.
Yeah.
But on the back side, so if you take this piece of farmland and now you have it zoned industrial for a warehouse, industrial or warehouse, that piece of land likely will have doubled in value.
Wow.
Or maybe tripled in value. And so then somebody else out there who's a builder, a commercial builder, they're like, I build commercial buildings. I don't do land entitlement. And now you've got a place zoned industrial. They're like, great, I'll pay you, you bought it for $1 million. I'll pay you $2 million for it. And they take it and they go build a warehouse. And then they sell it to somebody else who owns and rents warehouses. Or we've got a deal right now that I'm actually an LP on, but I jumped in because it sounded like a great deal and I wanted to see the process. Mm-hmm. But it's a place in Florida that had been through the whole process to be a hotel. They were ready to go. And then they decided, for whatever reason, they no longer wanted to build the hotel and they were going to sell the property. And basically, the group I'm working with, they bought it. They're re-entitling it or getting it rezoned, new plans built, approval for it to become an apartment complex. Mm-hmm. And based upon how many units are approved at the end is what the value will be. And so then the apartment builders, these guys, they're really good at building apartment buildings, doing it efficiently, getting it up, getting an occupancy permit, and getting it rented. They don't do land entitlement. So basically by buying this thing that's like halfway to the finish line because it's approved for a hotel and just doing the design work and getting it approved for apartment complexes added $1 million to the value of the property.
Yeah. So to me, I almost want to call it like flipping land, where you're changing the zoning on it. And I've had some experience going through the design process, doing zoning. We had what was it? I think we had 20 new construction site condos, and we did it in an area where we could increase the density based off the existing code. And it was right down in a city section. So it was just it's a joyful process. So you gotta be that kind of person to go through that process, right, Mike?
Yeah, because some people enjoy it and some people hate it.
Yeah.
And that's why the builders don't want to do it. A lot of the biggest builders, don't even do it anymore, because
Right.
to them it's a huge hassle and a distraction.
It's not their baby. It's not their lane.
Yeah, and they're worried about the whole time. Like, they don't want to own a piece of property.
Oh,
They want to close and roll bulldozers on the same day.
Yep.
Like, they don't want it to sit there at all. So they want it ready to go the day they own it.
Yeah. And the size of the length of those type of investments always. So time is directly correlated to risk when it comes to investing, right? And when we do these, we do these bigger projects like this, developments and condos, and you end up becoming your own competition. So depending on how many phases you build, you could have people selling your houses, and now you're competing against yourself on something that you've already built, and it's stretched out in time. It's crazy.
That's a great point. I've never been in that situation. Yeah,
it's fascinating, man. And that's just my lane is single family, residential, tiptoeing. I've got some mixed use commercial myself. I love mixed use commercial, and multifamily is definitely on our forefront. Getting into that, I know that's the path. That's the path. You've moved into non-residential commercial, but now you have Fortress Capital. So thefortresscapital.com. And you've moved into this platform of basically syndication and fundraising and showing this path to other physicians and other high income earners, right?
Yeah, and that all started because as I started to make this shift, it's back to the, it's the who, not how, one of my favorite books. And I was like, to really move forward on this, I need to get in the same room with people who are experts in this space.
Is that Good to Great?
No, I think it might be the same author.
Okay.
I'd have to look and see.
Good fact checker there. Who's out there? It's got the fact check.
I'd heard about the book for years, and then
not Traction, is it? Traction, Good to Great. I mean, I read those books through the same time period.
Exactly. I'm looking at my Audible. I have to admit, I don't read many books. I read really slow.
Listen to them. Yeah.
It is Who, Not How, Dan Sullivan.
Okay. Oh, so that's the title of the book.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is the same as Traction, right? No, Traction's
Gino Wickman. Yep.
What else did Dan Sullivan do? Anyway, it's all right down that same avenue.
Yeah.
But
and it makes sense. The who, not how. Yep.
Basically, what the whole point of the book is in the time it takes to figure out how to do something you don't know how to do, or something you're not naturally good at, or something you're not all that interested in, is a waste of your time and energy, because there's somebody else out there who this is their gift.
Mm-hmm.
And if you connect with them or hire them or partner with them, you're going to be exceptionally better and go exceptionally faster.
Yeah.
And so that was my whole idea with Fortress Capital, was as I started to get into this world, I'm a doctor. I know a bunch of high net worth individuals. I work with them every day, and I have a little bit more trust because I'm one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I have access. And as I started, really, it was working with a coach. We were talking about some different things, and he's like, what they're telling you? Like, he had to hit me on the head and help me learn. But that I was talking about, well, yeah, since I started doing this real estate, all these docs are like, what's this real estate thing you're doing? What are you doing? Because they've just got stuff in their retirement account and stock market, and they had no idea. And he's like, those are your investors.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
And now that you have investors, you can sit at the table with people who are experienced sponsors,
mm-hmm.
and you put them together. That's called a capital raiser. And so that's really where it started, was to make this connection where, like, I can help docs have better things to invest in. At the same time, I can use that to put me in front of experienced sponsors. And, it helps those sponsors. They need investors to do deals, to build projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And on this, thefortresscapital.com, you actually have a section on there where they can book a time to talk with you, learn a little bit more about the process. And I think, your path coming in as an LP, a limited partner, and then moving into a place of sponsorship and even general partnership. Now, it takes experience. It takes being in the right room, and it takes exactly what you're saying, being around the people who this is their gift. This is this is what they're good at. And if you can learn from those people, it'd be like that same kind of epiphany where you had the high performance coach look at you and say, "Hey, Mike, you need to make a change, man." So it's like that thing. This is their thing. This is what they do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So the people can find you on there, and they can also find you on LinkedIn, right? And I've got this right up here. It's just searching Michael McManus on there. And I'll put the link in the description here. Also on Instagram, wherever, Michael McManus P on Instagram. But the Fortress Capital is a great place. It's very simple. It's just spelled out, thefortresscapital.com. Can find you on there, talk with you more about syndication. What's one thing that you would tell yourself if you were able to go back, say, 15 years, Mike? What would you tell yourself?
Get my wife interested where she wanted to be a real estate professional. That would have saved like $1 million in taxes probably over the years.
Wow.
That would be the big one. And learn about real estate. It's the fastest way to build wealth, to build alternative income streams. And I think we hear so much. You hear about some deal gone bad on the news. You know, there was that one recently, the big headline about the guys in Texas who lost like, I don't know, $300 million worth of stuff to foreclosure. And you'll always hear those stories and they stick out to the cautious doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in reality, most apartment syndicators out there are doing fine still.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were a few who might have done things not so smart, but you don't learn till you get in, and you got to get started, and you will make some mistakes. You know, you start smaller, you do a house hack, you learn about tenants a little bit, you buy a duplex, you learn about tenants a little bit, and then you decide you like managing them or you don't. If you don't, now you can start talking to apartment syndicators and you understand a little bit about being a landlord.
Yeah.
Or you just start as a passive investor and start talking to syndicators and go that way. And you never have to be active. You can take a class. I'll throw the plug out here for Peter Kim and passive doctorate. What is it? Oh man, look up Peter Kim.
MD. Yeah.
Passive income MD.
There you go. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Passive income MD. Yep.
It's relatively inexpensive, online course with, videos and interaction and group and, something like that, just where you start to learn the lingo. You could do it all on Facebook for free. On YouTube for free. It's just a little less organized. So, but start moving down the road.
Yep. So going back 15 years, telling yourself that, mentioning the real estate professional piece. And I just want to throw this in here too. There's, I believe there's a specific part of the code around short term. And if it's based around the average day stay, I don't know if it's 3 days or 7 days, you could drastically reduce your amount of time required of material investment, right? Material invested time to, I believe, like 100 hours instead of 750.
Yeah, it's definitely one to talk to your accountant about, because I've heard that. I haven't looked at it, but it's like the shortcut.
Yeah. Daniel Shin is another MD doing something similar to this. And I have to double check that, but he doing the same thing and does case studies off of it. So just that 100 hours is a massive difference. So I'm just thinking, Mike, was there a way that you could short term, if that direction was real, if you checked with your CPA and you confirmed that, could you short term the fourplexes and then do a cost seg on it?
No, because they're in a city that is very tightly restricted on their, but if we wanted to, I think we could sell that fourplex in a day because of its location and buy something outside of the city limits of where it's at, where there's same demand. It would just take, we could do it. It would just take making some moves.
Yep. And then tracking your time. It's another process, but there's potential there. We've got Airbnbs as well too, where I had a guest on it. I forget what he called them. They're not short term. They're not long term. They're midterm. I think he may have called them midterm. So they're 30 days or more. Yeah. That's what a lot of our Airbnbs are based off of the municipalities we're in. So It increases the income, and it controls the tenant class in certain areas by having a higher priced place, furnishing it. It's just a different approach, So
yeah, if you're near a hospital, often then you get traveling nurses and locums doctors.
Yes, a lot of the people we get is traveling nurses. So absolutely. But hey, man, we're running up on the clock here. I have an absolute time. Man, it's been a blast speaking with you, Mike. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So you can find Mike at thefortresscapital.com. You can find him on LinkedIn. Michael McManus P on Instagram. You can find him. Search him up. Talk to him about his experience. Talk to him about becoming a limited partner, and then his path to becoming a general partner, sponsoring some of these deals, and learn what you can. I always love asking these questions and say, what would you tell yourself 15 years ago? And it's always real estate. Do something with real estate. Don't wait for permission. Take action. This is over and over and again. So if you guys are listening to this, thank you for your time. Take notes, but more importantly, take action. And the next time that somebody asks you how you're doing, challenge you. 7 days. I've never been better. Thanks for listening. Thanks again, Mike. Everybody have a great day out there.